Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. We'll get started in about a minute and a half. Thanks for being with us. If you want to share where you're calling in from, that would be great to see. And I would also love to know what drew you to this seminar today. Is it specifically ELA? Is it Sarah Robertson? Would love to know what's compelling to you about this topic. Folks just joining, thank you for being here. If you want to drop your name in the chat, say where you're coming in from, and also share what drew you to join this conversation today, that would be great. Okay, so I want to be super respectful of time, so we'll get started right away. My name is Aviv Weiss. I'm here with Sarah Robertson. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Sarah, can you give me a thumbs up that you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So I'm here with Sarah Robertson. Sarah taught for 10 years as an English teacher, has extensive experience in curriculum design and instruction. She and I actually both taught in the same public charter network well over 10 years ago. Sarah today works on literacy and classroom experience. You'll see more of sort of what that work looks like, what it means today. And I've been working since I left the classroom 6 years ago. I've been working at Khan Academy. I'm like the luckiest person in the world. It was my first job after leaving the classroom. And I've been working specifically on the Khan Academy districts team. So my job has been to bring our services, so professional learning and strategic implementation support of Khan Academy, all the content, all the classroom tools to hundreds of schools districts across the US. Let's dive right into today's topic, which is progress in the ELA classroom now that AI is at our fingertips. So before we even talk about what that means, what that looks like, I do want to touch on probably the most important piece to all of us in this room, which is safety. As a nonprofit, SalCon and the whole Khan Academy team, we are completely focused on helping school districts and individual schools drive deep student learning. AI is one more tool in the toolbox, but I do want to just take this opportunity to share that whether it's Khan Academy or any other sort of AI provider or vendor, everyone should, at the very least, have clean SOC 2 Type 2 audits, be FERPA and COPPA compliant, state-specific or district-specific terms of services. These are like table stakes things that need to be in place. So I encourage you to learn more about what that looks like with Khan Academy, given we have so many free AI tools and anyone else you're working with. And Sarah will show more in just a moment of what moderation technology that keeps students safe looks like in the writing coach tool specifically. So let's dive into today's topic. Sarah and I both know, I think probably, especially because we worked for the same network for a number of years, we would run interim assessments 4 times a year, which meant for English teachers that we had 90 to 100 essays to grade at least 4 times in the year. And of course, that was just for assessments. There's lots of writing that happens throughout a regular school week. But those 4 times a year would really kind of focus us on this incredible problem of not being able to provide meaningful, timely feedback to our students. And we would sit there with literal piles of paper, and if we were lucky, some pizza, and we knew that we had like 90 minutes to grade before they couldn't keep us in the building anymore. And then we'd give it back to the students, and then maybe we would review in class and run around the classroom like with a chicken without its head on, like trying to quickly give feedback in the moment. Sarah, you have the opportunity to work on this problem in a technology development setting. Can you talk to this group, to me, about how this problem made its way from your real lived life to what you're working on now at Khan Academy?
Yeah, of course. Thanks everybody for joining. Really excited to talk about this. As Aviv mentioned, I think when we talk about ELA in particular, it is a different ball game when it comes to the challenges that teachers are facing in classrooms. And I say this as somebody who left teaching before ChatGPT came out, I mean, I think it starts with the fact that the expectations are obviously very high. I don't know how well known this is, but the National Commission on Writing actually recommends that students spend 60 minutes per day writing. This is middle and high school students. That's the recommendation. And grade level writing standards are pretty high. I can say, having taught middle school students in Boston, many of my students came to me well below grade level in both reading and writing. But I think what makes writing particularly hard is that the demand of the writing process, writing is very time consuming. And as a teacher, typically you're working with a class of 25, 30 something kids in the room at a time. And then you might have multiple sections that you teach. So, I had about 100 students that I was responsible for. And knowing that I needed to give them not just assessments that tested their writing skills, but I needed to give them practice. And I didn't just need to give them practice, I need to give them feedback on that practice. That becomes almost impossible for an ELA teacher to do at the level of 60 minutes a day if you are giving kids feedback, and kids cannot grow without feedback. And that feedback also, it can't just be like a rubric with some things circled. Like, good feedback is specific, actionable, personalized, and timely, like delivered in a timely manner so that students can kind of analyze what they've done and implement changes immediately in the draft that they've already started and then in future writing as well. But we all know, I mean, you all are well aware that this is not happening effectively in many classrooms in the US. And I think once ChatGPT was launched, there became an entirely new challenge that English teachers in particular and humanities teachers face, which is it becomes really difficult for a humanities teacher to actually know what content that a student is turning in was created by them versus by AI. I know a lot of teachers who rely on things like AI detectors. Those have proven to be highly ineffective at actually figuring out what is written by a human and what is written by AI. And so when we saw this technology, come out, I think the first reaction was, oh no, this makes teaching so much harder. But at the same time, we saw potential for a way to solve those problems that we hadn't had before. So as somebody who's worked in building ed tech products for ELA teachers now for almost 8 years, I can tell you that when we saw this technology in action, immediately we began thinking about how the game has changed for education technology, how the challenges have changed, and how the potential has changed for what we could build. So at Khan Academy, we saw a really big opportunity in this very specific area of writing feedback. So we spent actually 1 week to start prototyping an experience where we tested what would happen if a student had access to an AI tool that would help them craft a thesis and not write it for them. So we experimented with this idea. And what we found at the end of that week was it was actually really powerful what we could build if we just kind of prompt engineered the AI in the ways that we wanted to and build a product that wasn't just, a chat bot on the side of a kind of classic learning experience, but actually integrated into the learning experience for students. So I am going to jump into the demo
Yeah,
of what that
perfect.
initial prototype evolved into, because now it's been, almost 2 years, I think, since we started working on this specific problem of the ELA instruction, the writing instruction for teachers. So I am
Perfect.
going.
And Sarah, while you tee that up, I just want to remind everyone the chat is open. While Sarah's showing everything, I'll be looking at the chat and very happy to answer your questions and make sure to get them up to Sarah afterwards. Please just write them in the chat if you don't mind.
All right. Aviv, are you seeing about this activity?
I am.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start from actually the teacher experience. The teacher experience of Writing Coach, we wanted to treat it as as important as the student experience of writing coach, because we still believe that writing teachers, English teachers, humanities teachers are going to be the drivers of this learning. We want them to maintain control of what students are writing about, when they want to assign essays. And beyond that, we want to give them the flexibility to define the expectations for assignments, and also giving them the insights and the reporting and the record of what students worked on in ways that have really never been possible before. So I'm going to start from the teacher experience just to show you what it looks like for a teacher who is setting up a writing coach essay assignment. So these are the learning activities right now for students on Khan Academy's Khanmigo AI tutor. And writing coach is right here under the right category. So teachers, when they access this page, they see kind of a teacher-facing informational page that gives them an overview of how writing coach works from a teacher perspective. And then teachers can do things like preview sample essays under My Essays, or even start their own essay if they want to demo the writing coach experience for students or try it out themselves. My Assignments is where they manage the actual essays that they're assigning to students. So when a teacher wants to create a writing coach assignment, they have total control over what students are writing about. So if your teachers are working off of a specific curriculum that already has writing prompts, or they, design their own writing curriculum, they can use those writing prompts. This is not the kind of thing where we force you to choose between the prompts that we've designed. We really leave it up to the teacher to decide what they want to assign. You can also do, find prompts from previous state writing assessments. If you have state writing assessments, you can literally copy and paste the essay prompt and instructions into this box. So teachers get to choose the title of the assignment. They can select from the grade levels. Right now, we officially support grades 7 through 12 for Writing Coach. It will work for younger grades, but it isn't exactly calibrated to support really low level fifth, sixth grade typical writing. I think it would just be a little bit more advanced for those grade levels. So right now the official grades we support are 7 through 12, but if you have advanced fifth or sixth graders, there's nothing stopping them from using this. And then for essay types, we support the primary kind of academic middle and high school essay format. So persuasive and argumentative essays, explanatory or expository essays, and literary analysis. And again, the teacher can just paste in their essay prompt and instructions here. The more specific these instructions are, the better the experience will be for students. This is a field that the AI itself is using to determine how it supports students. So if the teacher says, I want students to include a concession and rebuttal paragraph for this argumentative essay, that is assigned then to the AI to make sure that students include that when they are writing their drafts or even their outlines. So the more granular it gets, the more helpful Khanmigo can be. And another example is, I want my students to use MLA or APA citations. Like that level of detail is what will help Khanmigo recognize what the teacher expects and ensure that students are held to that standard. And then of course we have things like minimum word count, and then typical, due dates and those kinds of things. And then I'll jump over to the student experience. Let me change my window here. Okay. Now I'm in a student account. So similarly, the students have their activities page, but if they're given a writing coach assignment, they'll see it, in their learner homepage under their assignments queue. But when they go to writing coach, they will see their assignments listed here and they can jump right into them. So this is an example of one that I've already completed, but writing coach for students is broken down into 4 main stages of the writing process. So the first stage that we've built out is understanding. And this came from a lot of user research we did with teachers and students, where they were really clear that when it came to essay assignments, one of the things that students struggled with the most was just understanding what the teacher was expecting of them, breaking down the prompt, really figuring out what the expectations were, getting help with like the first step of figuring out, do I need to do research? Do I need to find evidence in a text the teacher provided? Do I need to do some brainstorming? And this is where the student gets access to what the teacher assigned. And this is an exact copy of what the teacher assigned here on the left. And then when students join, they will initially get a prompt from Khanmigo saying, I'm here to help with essay requirements. And students can engage with, 2 recommended chats with Khanmigo about the essay instructions, or a student can ask any question about it. So if the student kind of wants to dig into essay requirements, Khanmigo will summarize them for the student. It will prompt them to figure out if they're ready to move on. So it will follow up with questions like, what do I do with, well, have you done reading or research on the topic? And then it's, what do you think your main claim is going to be? And reassuring them if they're confused and encouraging them to take a next step, like organizing their thoughts, giving them ideas like mind maps or Venn diagrams. It will react to whatever the student is saying around whether or not they have a position. It can define, key terms in the essay instructions. What does rebut mean? And kind of help them to figure out, when they're ready to move on to the second stage, which is outlining. Again, this is a completed writing coach assignment. So a fresh kind of new writing coach assignment, a student would see this blank essay template. And the blank essay template, when there isn't text in here, the student will see an exemplar, example of a thesis. Same thing for main points and topics and evidences and examples, so that students can see an expectation of what that might look like, but aligned to a completely different essay topic. So we're not going to, give them something they can copy, but we are going to show them what, an exemplary main point might look like, or thesis statement might look like for that given essay type. And then again, Khanmigo is here. Their assignment instructions are always accessible in the right-hand panel. And Khanmigo will start with I'm here. The next step is outlining, and students can kind of engage with Khanmigo if they want to, or if they're all set, they don't have to. So the outline is designed to be really flexible. Students can add or remove body paragraphs. They can add or remove different components like evidence and source and reasoning or explanation. We want it to be the kind of outline format that will support, pretty much any essay structure. And then Khanmigo is there if a student gets stuck. So if they're blank page, a little bit feeling a little paralyzed by what to do, they can just say I'm stuck. Or if they make a little progress, they can ask Khanmigo to check their outline so far. Khanmigo is going to break it down for them if they say they're stuck. It is not going to give them any answers, or it's not going to give them any direct things to include or write. I think in this particular account I'm in, I don't have examples of the student asking Khanmigo to cheat for them, but I can show you that from the teacher perspective and kind of how that is handled there. But you can see here, in this case, this is kind of the perspective of a student who asks a lot of questions. We know that there are also many students who don't ask questions, but they still have them, and they still want to, we still want to make sure that they are getting checked in on. So another thing that we do in Writing Coach is when a student moves from outlining to drafting, let's say they fill out part of their outline or, some of their outline, and they try to move on to drafting, even if they're not asking Khanmigo for help, or if they haven't asked for help at all, we are going to do a behind the scenes check of that outline and look for, is it aligned to what the teacher asked for? Is it on topic? Did they write an essay, with a particular thesis, but then the body paragraphs contradict the thesis? Like, it's checking for general completeness, and then also general alignment. It's not going to go really deep on the details of how they've expressed their ideas, but it's going to check for general alignment to make sure that their outline is complete and that it is aligned to what the teacher has asked for and the argument they're trying to make. And that will kind of be a sort of checkpoint before they move on to the next stage. So even those students who are really not gonna engage or take the initiative to engage with Khanmigo, they will still have the opportunity to be followed up with before they move on. The drafting stage is pretty straightforward. Again, students have access to their assignment instructions and a Khanmigo chat that's going to be there to help them through this particular stage of the writing, but they also have access to the outline that they drafted with Khanmigo in the previous stage. And when they have access to this outline, they can copy and paste chunks of it into their draft, get an updated word count, and begin to construct that first draft. And again, when the student asks Khanmigo, can you write my body paragraph for me? Can you rewrite this sentence? Can you tell me another way to say this statement or something? Khanmigo will not allow them, or Khanmigo will not tell them how to write it, but it could follow up with, here's what I recommend doing, or here's how I'd recommend going about this, or it'll find ways to unblock them if they're feeling stuck. And then if they're also doing things like pasting content from outside of their outline here into their draft, we're also doing things behind the scenes that the student isn't really aware of that will indicate that to teachers. And I will show you what that looks like when I show you the rest of the teacher experience. But when the student is ready to move on to revising, again, we're going to do a behind the scenes check. Is it a complete draft? Does this look like a first draft? Is it aligned to what the assignment was before we let them move on to revising? And then during the revising stage, the first thing that happens is Khanmigo will generate feedback in 5 general categories. These are broadly aligned to most, rubrics across different standards frameworks, but introduction includes things like thesis or claim alignment, hook, context, etc., evidence and reasoning, pretty straightforward, structure and organization, conclusion, style and tone. And so the feedback gets generated in these 5 areas. Khanmigo aims to give positive feedback as well as constructive feedback. And then one of the nicest features about Writing Coach is that it doesn't just end with the feedback and then leave the student to their own devices to kind of use that how they like. There are opportunities for students to engage with Khanmigo about the feedback that they received. So I actually don't think you can see it here because, oh yeah, here's an example. The prompts that we give students when we give them a piece of feedback include kind of almost like sentence starters. So in this case, the student starts a quotation abruptly without giving the context of where it's coming from. So the student can say, give me an example, and Khanmigo will give them an example again from a completely different essay topic or prompt. If they make a change in the actual essay, the student can say, check my revision, and it will follow up with that feedback. So here's an example of what that looks like. In this particular feedback, Khanmigo is saying, introductory information to set up your quotation. So similar to that other feedback that you just saw. So the student said explain suggestion, and it's giving an example from another essay. So pollution is harmful, and then the student just plops in a quote, which was something my 7th graders did all the time. And then in this kind of exemplary response, there is more context that shows where the quote comes from and sets that up a little bit better. So the student can then go back in and make that revision and mark that feedback as resolved. And they can work their way through this feedback, engaging with Khanmigo, asking follow-up questions, asking for re-revisions or re-reviews of the feedback as they like. And when they're done, they can mark it as complete and they can export the final draft to any of these 3 different formats. And that is in just the student experience of the Writing Coach. But if I go back to let me switch my screen. Hold on. There we go. Okay, back to the teacher experience. I'm now going to click into the assignment that same student was just working on. So I'm going to click on review, which will take me to the class report. Again, this is this essay about school start times. And I am going to click on, let's look at this. So if I go to students who have started or completed the assignment, I can see at a glance where students are in the writing process. I can see who's completed or what step they're on if they have not yet completed but started. I can see if they edited their essay after the due date passed, or if they haven't completed it yet and it's past due date. I can see when they last worked on it, how much time they spent overall across all of the 4 stages, the current word count of their draft, and then in terms of the feedback that Khanmigo gave, how much feedback they got and how much of that feedback they resolved. Future things coming, we're going to show them, how much time was spent on each stage of the writing process, as well as where the feedback was kind of concentrated for those different students. And then this is one of the more exciting and interesting aspects of Writing Coach for many teachers and administrators, which is this originality index. So the originality flags are what I mentioned. We trigger in the back end when a student does something like paste a certain number of words in a certain field. And this happens either during the outlining phase. So if the student is pasting text into an evidence field, for obvious reasons, that is not a flag. We expect them to do something like that. But if they paste a large amount of text in their main point or their thesis field, we're going to trigger a flag for the teacher just so they can double click into that and figure out what exactly happened. And then for their draft and their first draft and their kind of revised draft, again, if they're pasting from an outline, that's fine. If they're pasting from somewhere outside of the outline more than a couple of words, we're going to trigger that flag for the teacher. And it's not about saying definitively, this student cheated or this student probably cheated. It is really just a sign that's telling teachers what happened. So I can now click into this student. Let's see what this one says. And I can see that, on this date during the revising stage, when the student's essay looked like this, they pasted 30 words from an unknown source. Unknown source means not their outline. And I can see in this particular case, what the student pasted was another piece of evidence. And if I click ahead just 3 minutes, I can see, okay, yes, the student added a little context, they added some end quotes, and they added their source. So I can dismiss this flag. This is not an issue, not a cheating concern. I can feel confident that this student, this was their work. But if I go back to another student who has flags as well and click into this, I can see this student actually has 2 flags. One of them happened during outlining. So I can see they pasted 100 words into a main point or topic section, which I see right here. I can tell as a teacher it's very different from the main points in the other paragraphs. I also have access to their full chat history. So during different stages of the writing process. So I can kind of skim that and get a sense of how the student was engaging with the AI. This obviously kind of affirms my suspicion that maybe the student did not write this text. And I should follow up with them directly about why they're asking Khanmigo to give them evidence and why they're pasting 100 words into their outline that look very different from the other parts of their outline. Again, if I click on the second flag during drafting, I can see here, again, the student is really asking Khanmigo to do the work for them. And of course, Khanmigo's declining. But I can see what happened during this interaction, which is that the student basically pasted the entire conclusion paragraph into their essay after, working on the first draft for about an hour. So these are the originality flags. Again, they are meant to be indications to the teachers about what happened and when, and give the teachers more visibility into how students are writing. And I think it's the way I like to think about it is it's not just about, cheating or like catching students in these moments, but there is a lot of value too in being able to get a sense of the student's entire writing process. This was something that I did not have access to or the resources or the time to keep track of when I was a teacher. But if I know, a student is struggling, if I can identify 3 to 5 kids in each class that are clearly struggling the most with writing, I can drill down into their writing process and figure out, is the issue that the student really struggled with outlining and developing their ideas? Did they not did they have a hard time coming up with vocabulary words of how to phrase things during drafting? What kinds of questions were they asking? What kinds of things were they getting feedback on? Were they engaging with that feedback? What does their revision process look like? It's a level of visibility into the writing process that I think hasn't existed before. And this is different from something like, Google Docs draft history, which really just shows me how a document changed over time. I don't just have access to the student's drafting history or revising history. I have access to the feedback they receive. I have access to how they engaged with that feedback. I have access to the outline and the thought process and the history of how they developed their ideas. I have access to the way that their stance on something might have evolved over the course of kind of exploring the topic that they're being asked to write about. And again, I don't think we expect teachers to go into that level of review for every single student in their class, but that's why we have these higher level class reports to give teachers access to this level of data, but also kind of surface insights that we think will help indicate to them, where should I as a teacher drill down my attention into? Is it, following up about cheating concerns? Is it figuring out, this student got 21 pieces of feedback versus this student who got 10? This student probably, needs a little bit more help. Or, this student might have spent a really long time. What does that indicate to me? And we're giving the autonomy to the teachers to kind of decide how they want to drill down into how they review that kind of data. But the access is there and the high level insights are there. And we're really excited too about the different ways we're thinking about surfacing instructional insights to teachers or letting them engage with the AI themselves about the assignments that the students are completing. But that is it for my writing coach version of the writing coach demo. Aviv, you had asked for me to also talk a little bit about teacher tools.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Okay. So if you've heard of Khanmigo prior to this, you are probably familiar with our teacher tools. Teacher tools are free currently to all teachers across the US, and any teacher can sign up and access them here. And I think, again, Khan Academy is very well known for math and science content, but a lot of our AI tools, a lot of our Khanmigo tools are actually, I think, even more geared toward humanities teachers than, they might be geared towards some math and science teachers. And some examples of these tools are, for ELA teachers in particular, I'll start with let's see, where's discussion prompts. So discussion prompts is an AI tool that all of these AI tools, by the way, are meant to be teacher efficiency tools or productivity tools. They help with resource creation, instructional planning, developing class materials. And so in the discussion prompts case, I actually think this is a really powerful tool for coming up with ideas for essay prompts that you could then use in the writing coach tool. So the teacher can select the grade level that they want, and then the topic, maybe you are talking about, I taught Lord of the Flies in my classroom. Maybe you're talking about, chaos versus order or something along those lines. Or even you could say, chapter 3 of Lord of the Flies. And Khanmigo will suggest different discussion prompts that you could use for a class discussion, or you could convert into an actual writing coach essay prompt. Other tools that are really useful, chunking text is one where the teacher can paste in something that's, 1,500 words or less, and then the teacher can indicate if they want Khanmigo to chunk a longer text by ideas for comprehension or a shorter text by phrases for fluency. So it's not actually changing the content of the text, but it's breaking it down into chunks for students who may need that if there's opportunities to kind of check for understanding at different points, or to break it down by fluency chunks if you're doing, fluency practice or read alouds. Another one, or a few of them that I would also point to, are the exit ticket one, the multiple choice quiz one, and the questions generator one. This was probably, aside from writing instruction, when I think about reading instruction, the thing that took the most time for me was generating questions. And this is really useful, if I'm thinking about questions about a text that we're reading in class, or questions are related to a skill that we're kind of learning in ELA class. So we did things like practicing identifying different kinds of figurative language, interpreting figurative language, different kinds of conflict, different forms of characterization. If you are a teacher looking for ways that you can generate practice questions related to skills like that, these tools are really wonderful for that. Just having something immediately available for teachers to interact with. And I actually think one of the things to show, let's do figurative language. Let's do that. I'll do 4. And then I want students to practice identifying different types of figurative language. So simile, metaphor, personification. Okay, let's say 7th grade and give me 10 questions. And I think what's particularly cool about this tool is that it doesn't just spit out, a chat response that a teacher would copy and paste somewhere into a document. It's an interactive, we call co-editor, that's embedded in the product. So imagine a Google Doc that you can talk to, or that you can revise with the help of AI. So if I don't like this question, I can highlight it and I can ask Khanmigo, make changes to this, try something different, talk about this. I can also just open the chat here and ask questions about it, or get ideas about how to respond, or how to change things if I want to change things. But this has been really popular with teachers who are looking for ways to save time planning and developing student materials. And the last one that I wanted to highlight was our rubric generator. Obviously, rubrics are really helpful for ELA teachers when it comes to writing, grading writing assignments in particular. So this is another one that's really valuable to teachers. Basically, Khanmigo will ask them a few questions about the assignment that they want and the expectations and standards, and generate a table that they can then print out or export to use as a rubric. There's one more before I forget, which is text rewriter. I'll start by saying I think it is incredibly important for students to read grade level content, and that giving students instructional text at their grade level is really important. However, there are some really cool things that you can do as a teacher with this idea of AI as a releveling tool. For example, if I'm teaching a grade level text and I know my students are well below grade level, I might do a really interesting instructional activity where I take a chunk of the text that might be particularly challenging and I have the AI re-level it down a couple of grade levels, and I have my students read that. And I'm not having them read that as a replacement for the grade level content, but I might have them read that and then give them an opportunity to read the grade level version and have them compare and contrast the differences. What's lost when you re-level text with AI? How is it different in terms of style, tone, vocabulary, diction? What is present in the original text that the AI has stripped out? Why do you think it did that? Like how does it change the messaging or the theme or the tone of the piece? So I think there's really, really interesting ways that you could use this tool for an ELA classroom, while remaining really rigorous in the way that you're thinking about instruction. I think now I will pass it back to Aviv.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Sarah, quick, interesting question we got in the chat. There were a lot of really great questions. One of them was specifically around this issue of plagiarism, right? So if a student is typing something in, it's not necessarily from a well-known text, but they are copying from a different place. How might it, and so it wouldn't necessarily pick up on it as not being the student's own, right? How might the teacher get to that?
Yeah, so we aimed at for the thing that we knew would be the most effective way at getting at the way most students are cheating at the moment first, and that is by pasting in content outside of their outline. One of the ways we're thinking about evolving the originality flags and adding on different, functions to the originality flags are the way the essay is drafted. That could look like how much time the student is spending on drafting. Is there alignment between the outline that they created and the draft that they ended up with? If there's a mismatch there, that might be something to look into. Another thing we're exploring is, linear drafting, where a student is sort of creating their draft one word in front of the other without really going back and inserting sentences here or transitions here. Something that might be indicative of not a natural way that most students draft. Obviously, that gets tricky because all students are different, and we don't want to, punish kids who might be different sort of thinkers or writers. And so we want to make sure that whatever we build next is very fair. The main purpose, again, is to tell the teacher what happened, from the perspective of the technology, not to make some sort of definitive accusation around what the student did. So
Right.
we're using the tools that at our disposal for that we have at our disposal now for doing that, but we are definitely thinking about, other hacks that students might come up
Yeah.
with for
Yeah.
getting around those. But there,
Thank
I
you
should
so
also
much.
add, we very specifically did not include the originality flags and the student experience. I've worked with students now for most of my life, and I know that they will, if they can figure out
Yeah.
how the system works, they'll find a way to work around that. So we made it teacher facing only, so that students,
Right.
cannot easily pick up on what is happening in the teacher experience.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna I'm skipping a few slides because we have a bunch of questions in the chat. Where is writing coach? I don't see it on my dashboard. So I want to be really clear about the difference between the free tools and these enterprise tools. So if you look at the column on the left, Khan Academy's mission is to provide a world-class education to anyone, anywhere. That means that our bottom line is learning. We measure learning really rigorously. Um, so it's never dollars, and we are working around the clock to make all of our tools as free or close to free as humanly possible. So at the moment, what we have that's free is forever all of our content. You never have to choose when you work with us. Do I focus on science or math or ELA? It's all there. It's free forever for anyone in tons of languages. You already have access to all standards aligned courses, including all of our ELA work. Teachers can already monitor progress and growth on ELA coursework. They can make targeted assignments, class-wide assignments for students. And then teachers have all of those Khanmigo tools that Sarah showed us at the end that support an ELA classroom. These are teacher-facing only. That is for a very specific reason, which is that to roll AI out to students takes a village. We work in a triangle with families and administration and Khan Academy around the clock to monitor student use. We really do work shoulder to shoulder with districts to make sure that our rollout of AI is serving the purpose of learning. Um, if you do partner with Khan Academy, you get a dedicated district success manager, seamless rostering, administrator reporting, which we talked a little bit about in the chat, PL specifically around AI. And then teachers can actually assign Khanmigo activities to students. And that is when students will actually see Khanmigo student tutor and writing coach. And then just to double click into that, as Sarah showed you, in whether students are chatting with Khanmigo on writing coach or just working on some math problems, Khanmigo will use a line of Socratic questioning to get into student thinking on their writing or on their thinking about a tricky math problem. And on writing, as you saw, they'll get really specific actionable feedback where the goal is to produce more and more writing. And then again, for admins and teachers, admins get admin AI tools. We're talking data insights that show administrators not just are people using it or not, but also which activities are teachers using Khanmigo for. So we're really kind of putting together this story as the year goes on of like, how is this district using AI to support learning? What's working, what's not? And then the services that we touched on, like professional learning, AI coaching, whatever it is that your district needs, whether that's on a district-wide basis or a few schools at a time. Yeah, so we'll pause here. If you do want to chat, if this is compelling for your district, I know some of us are just here because we wanted to see what sort of the latest and greatest in AI for ELA is. But if you are interested in chatting with a member of our team, these are the folks who are experts in bringing this technology to schools across the US. And you can reach us by scanning this QR code. It'll take you directly to an info request form, and you can always visit us at districts.khanacademy.org. Thank you so much for coming today. It means a lot to us that you took time out of your schedules. Everyone who's here will get the recording. You can feel free to share the registration link. The webinar will be available on demand. Super appreciate your questions, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.